I stood frozen in my own living room, eyes locked on my sister, champagne in hand, her smile dripping with smug satisfaction as she delivered the blow. "If you don't like living with us, you can leave." The words weren't a joke. They weren't a mistake. They were a calculated swing of the axe, and her friends, those strange, loud shadows drinking up my wine and smearing cake into my countertops, laughed like they'd just witnessed a show. But I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. I smiled. Because what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that their careless laughter had handed me exactly what I needed most: proof. And with that, the countdown began. Let me take you back to how the match was lit. 2 months before that explosive night, my life had finally reached a place I once only sketched in daydreams. I had just finished furnishing the new apartment. 3 elegant bedrooms, expansive floor-to-ceiling windows, and oak floors polished to a soft gold, catching the sunrise like something out of a dream. This wasn't just an apartment. It was a sanctuary. Every inch bore my fingerprint. Warm sand-colored walls, matte black fixtures, soft pendant lighting in just the right places. After a decade of clawing my way up, of surviving shared walls and folding futons, I had finally stepped into a life that was mine alone. And then she called. Sabrina. Her voice was high and syrupy, with just enough tremble to signal urgency. "Just a month," she said. "The contractor messed up the schedule again. We've got nowhere else to go. You've got all that space, right?" I should have known. Sabrina's idea of essentials had always come in the form of chaos: credit card debt, broken leases, endless calls to clean up her messes. Even when we were kids, she'd break it, and I'd be the one taping it back together. That dynamic didn't fade with age. She was still the family's golden girl, the wild spark everyone excused, while I was the one expected to keep the lights on. But guilt is a heavy chain, so I said yes. And 2 days later, a massive moving truck reversed into my quiet cul-de-sac like a warship docking for invasion. The back doors rolled open with a squeal, revealing mountains of boxes, plastic bins bursting with toys, bags of who knows what. A treadmill. A beanbag. I blinked, but it didn't disappear. Ethan, her husband, climbed out cradling a game console like it was the Holy Grail. Sabrina waved from the passenger seat, sunglasses glinting like a warning. "Surprise," she chirped. The moment they entered my home, the transformation began. My meticulously styled living room was overtaken in hours. Toys scattered like shrapnel across the floor. My designer chairs buried under throw blankets I didn't recognize. Sabrina took the guest room without asking, naturally. The kids were plopped into my room, as if their bedtime routine had outranked my autonomy. "You can use your studio, right?" she asked, breezing past me like a designer hurricane. "It's just temporary." I nodded, a polite statue in my own hallway, the words caught somewhere between indignation and disbelief. The first week was a lesson in slow unraveling. Cartoons blared at 6 a.m. sharp. Crumbs embedded themselves into the couch cushions. Crayons invaded my work desk. My design desk, where dreams became drafts. Sabrina called it family charm. Ethan, meanwhile, held daily video calls in his boxers, pacing my office while barking orders at his team and draining my imported coffee like water. At night, I curled up on a makeshift cot in the studio, listening to the refrigerator hum over the chaos. Every breath felt borrowed. And then came the peanut butter incident. I walked in from a client meeting to find my pristine marble counter smeared with sticky brown fingerprints. Sabrina didn't even look up from her phone. "The kids got hungry," she said, as though food attacks were normal. Later, I got the guilt call. "Mom," stern and scolding. "You need to be more understanding. Sabrina's under so much stress. Don't make her feel unwelcome." I wanted to laugh, but all I said was, "Sure, Mom. I'll try harder." Laying awake that night, I counted the faint ceiling cracks like I used to count timeouts during our childhood fights. Only now, instead of toy theft and tattling, it was my peace being ransacked. 30 days, I told myself. Just 30. I repeated it like a prayer, though something inside me, deep and whispering, knew better. Sabrina never leaves unless someone makes her. And this time, that someone would be me. That was just the beginning. The chaos had layers. One morning, I nearly slipped on a puddle of juice in the kitchen. The kids were running wild, barefoot, and screaming. "Where's your mom?" I asked. "She went out," one of them muttered. "At 8 in the morning? She said you'd make breakfast." I stood there stunned, coffee mug frozen in my hand. I was now their unpaid nanny. When Sabrina finally returned, shopping bag swinging, sunglasses still on, she dumped a box of overpriced pastries on the counter. "You're welcome," she said. "For what?" "Breakfast." And that was when it started to click. This wasn't temporary. This was takeover. Ethan turned my studio into his personal gaming den, cords snaking across the floor like trap wires. One day, I came home to find my laptop fried. He'd spilled soda on it and tried to mop it up with a dish towel. Thousands of dollars of client work gone. "Relax," he mumbled. "It's just stuff." "No, Ethan. It was everything." I called Tyler that night, my business partner and the only person I could vent to without filter. "They're turning my place into a landfill," I snapped, pacing the hallway with my phone pressed tight. "Then stop letting them," he said simply. "They're family. You design spaces so people can breathe. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to breathe in yours." He was right. But I wasn't ready, not yet. The guilt still choked me like smoke in a locked room. But the party would change that. The party would blow it all to pieces. It was supposed to be one evening. One small gathering. Just family, Sabrina promised, holding a bottle of wine and her signature grin like a magician hiding a trick up her sleeve. By then, my silence wasn't kindness anymore. It was a fuse. She didn't know it, but I'd already lit it days ago. And the party? That was the explosion. I came home late that night, exhausted after hours with a client whose kitchen remodel had been more emotional therapy than architecture. I remember thinking I'd unwind with a long shower and maybe a glass of that fancy Merlot I'd been saving. Instead, I opened the door and stepped into madness. The bass hit me first. A deep, throbbing rhythm pulsing through the walls like a heartbeat gone rogue. People I didn't know filled every corner of my home, laughing, shouting, balancing wine glasses over white upholstery like acrobats on a tightrope. Gold balloons floated near the ceiling, spelling out "Happy Birthday, Ethan" in crooked letters. One of them had already deflated, dangling sadly from a piece of duct tape. And my sister? Oh, she was glowing. Draped in sequins, holding a flute of champagne like she was the queen of someone else's castle. "You made it," she cheered, waving at me from across the room. "Grab a drink. You look tense." Tense? I stepped further in, my heels clicking against a sticky floor. "What is this?" I asked, though I already knew. "A party," she laughed, as though I was the one being dramatic. "Relax, Marin. You need to let loose." Marin. That's me. Marin Devlin. Designer. Survivor. Doormat, at least until now. I walked past a woman in heels who was dragging frosting across my cream rug. Ethan was dancing near the Bluetooth speaker, shirt half open, beer in hand, oblivious. The kids were nowhere in sight, thank God, but their absence only sharpened the truth. This wasn't a family gathering. It was a full-scale invasion. A man I'd never seen plopped onto my couch with a plate of greasy wings. I watched a glob of sauce fall between the cushions. That was it. I crossed the room, yanked the power cord from the speaker, and let silence crash through the space like thunder. Ethan spun around. "Hey, what the hell?" "This isn't your house," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I never agreed to this." The silence deepened. All eyes were on me. Sabrina walked over, her smile tight. "It's just one night, Marin. Don't be a buzzkill. You've been so uptight lately." I could feel it, the edges of myself hardening. "You've been enjoying my life for months," I replied, each word sharpened like a blade. "My food. My time. My home. And I've said nothing." "You're overreacting," she snapped. "It's just family." I looked around the room at the crowd of strangers. "Then where's the family, Sabrina?" Nobody answered. Someone in the back muttered, "Yikes." The silence felt heavier than all the noise before it. My hands were steady, but my heart was sprinting. I turned, rinsed an empty glass under the sink, and placed it back neatly into the cabinet. That sound, glass against glass, rang through the tension like a closing curtain. Sabrina stepped closer, her voice low now. "You really can't stand to see anyone else happy, can you?" "Happy?" I said. "You think this mess is happiness?" She gave me that old smirk, the one she used as a teenager when she'd stolen my clothes and swore they were hers. "If you don't like living with us, you can leave." There it was. Not a joke. Not a slip. A test. And she had just found the line. I didn't cry. Didn't yell. I walked past the guests like a ghost slipping through smoke. Down the hall. Into my bedroom, what used to be my bedroom, now overtaken by toys and glittery backpacks. I grabbed my keys, wallet, and coat. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't slam a door. The hallway outside was still and cool. My building buzzed gently with life. But inside me, something else buzzed louder. I wasn't leaving because I lost. I was leaving because they had. The hotel I checked into was 10 blocks away, simple, clean, quiet. The clerk handed me a key card without looking up, and I muttered something about a long night. "You have no idea," I added under my breath. I sat on the bed for a long time. The room was silent, but not empty. It was full of all the thoughts I had been too tired to think. The echoes of Sabrina's voice, my mother's blame, Ethan's shrugs, the clients I almost lost, the work I almost ruined. I opened my phone and scrolled through old texts. My stomach turned as I read the same cycle over and over again. "Mom, be patient with your sister." "Sabrina, just a little help, I swear." "Dad, nothing at all." My jaw clenched. It wasn't just this party. It was the history. A lifetime of being the fallback plan. The cleanup crew. The afterthought. No more. Not now. Not again. I returned the next morning. The apartment was quiet, but not in the way I remembered. It was the kind of silence that hides something ugly in the corners. The smell hit first. Beer. Sweat. Burnt food. I stepped inside and stopped dead. My once beautiful living room looked like it had been looted. Sticky cups littered the surfaces. Plates crusted with leftovers sat on the floor. The wine stain on my rug had spread into something grotesque. A Barbie doll floated upside down in the mess. I didn't scream. Instead, I walked over to the stereo and turned on the soft jazz playlist I used to work to. Smooth saxophone filled the space, curling around the trash like a strange, gentle ghost. Then I rolled up my sleeves. This wasn't sadness anymore. This wasn't fear. It was surgical. I moved through the apartment like a machine, gathering toys, tossing cans, folding clothes that weren't mine into boxes I had saved for emergencies. And this? This was an emergency. By noon, 4 suitcases and 3 boxes sat neatly by the front door, labeled with bold black marker. Everything that didn't belong gone. My hands didn't shake once. Then I stood in the center of the apartment, breathing deep. "You said if I don't like it, I can leave," I whispered. "I did. Now it's your turn." The air sighed. The building exhaled. And for the first time in months, I could hear my own heart again. The door creaked open around 1:15 p.m. I was sitting cross-legged on my now empty living room floor, sipping lukewarm coffee and listening to the soft jazz I'd left playing as my only witness. The sound was soothing, like brushing fingertips against old scars. Sabrina walked in first. She had a bag of groceries in one hand and her phone in the other. Her sunglasses were still on, as if she needed protection from the truth waiting inside. Behind her, Ethan followed, dragging the kids who looked half asleep, half annoyed. They stopped cold. The 4 suitcases and 3 boxes stood like monuments by the front door, flanked by their shoes, coats, toys, and forgotten clutter. Neatly packed. Carefully labeled. Undeniably final. "What is this?" Sabrina asked, her voice climbing fast, brittle at the edges. I set my coffee down and stood slowly. The silence between us was thick, charged, alive. "I packed your things," I said, calm. "You're leaving." "You can't kick us out," she snapped, dropping the groceries with a dramatic thud. "You said we could stay." "No," I corrected, stepping forward. You said you'd stay for a month. Then you said I could leave. So I did. For one night. I paused, looking her dead in the eye. Now it's your turn. Her face twisted, caught between disbelief and rage. I was joking, she spat. You're being insane. I didn't flinch. No. I was being patient. I was being family. But you weren't. You turned my home into a frat house, trashed everything I built, and made me the villain for asking for boundaries. We didn't trash anything, Ethan said from the corner, crossing his arms like a sulking teenager. It was just one party. I pointed to the rug. One party that left a wine stain the size of a crime scene. One party that cost me 2 clients and a $700 cleaning bill. He looked away. Sabrina's voice broke. We had nowhere else to go, Marin. You do now, I said, reaching for the folder on the table. Inside, a lease agreement, printed maps, and a bank receipt. 2-bedroom rental. Close to the kids' school. First month's rent is already paid. After that, you're on your own. She stared at the folder like it was poison. You're unbelievable, she hissed. You've always thought you were better than us. With your fancy job, your perfect apartment, your stupid quiet life. I stepped closer, matching her tone. No, Sabrina. You think I'm better than you. That's why you came here. That's why you tried to take it. She blinked. Just once. But I saw it, the hit landed. Ethan finally spoke, voice low, almost defeated. Where are we supposed to go? I softened slightly. Somewhere that isn't here. The kids stood silently, their small hands still sticky from whatever snack they'd just eaten. I felt a pang in my chest. Not for them being sent away, but for what they'd been learning in this mess. What they were growing into. But I didn't waver. Then my phone buzzed. A message from the building manager. Noise complaint investigation complete. Violation confirmed. Attached was the violation report, with Sabrina and Ethan's names clearly listed. I looked up from my phone. By the way, I said casually, the building confirmed your party broke 3 community codes. Mrs. Langford from next door even sent me footage. Sabrina's jaw dropped. I sent it to Mom and Dad, I continued. Along with the bills you've racked up, electricity, water, groceries, repairs. All of it. You're sick, she whispered. No, I said, quietly, clearly, I'm done. That was the moment it all cracked. I could feel it, not like glass shattering, but like a frozen river finally giving way beneath too much weight. And this time, I wasn't the one falling in. They didn't fight after that. Sabrina stormed into the guest room, slammed the door, and didn't come out for an hour. Ethan sat on the couch, not touching a thing, as if realizing for the first time that none of it had ever belonged to him. The kids huddled near the hallway with snacks and silence. Eventually, they started gathering their things. Bags were zipped. Boxes taped shut. No goodbyes. No thank yous. Just the sound of endings. That night, my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. You can't throw your sister out like that, she snapped. She's family. We don't turn our backs on family. I muted the call. Poured a glass of wine. Turned the jazz up louder. They left the next morning without a word. The door clicked closed behind them with a finality that echoed through the apartment. I half expected to find a mess left in spite, but no. They'd actually cleaned. No note. No apology. Just an open window letting in cold city air. And for the first time in months, I breathed. The days that followed were quiet. Deliciously, achingly quiet. I reorganized the bookshelves. Lit the candles I'd buried in drawers. Replaced the ruined rug. Bought new linens. Slept with the windows cracked open. The silence wasn't lonely. It was earned. Tyler came by one evening, carrying Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. Looks different in here, he said, glancing around. I smiled. It finally looks like me again. He nodded. You look different too. I laughed. Maybe peace has good lighting. It took 2 days for the silence to be broken. 2 peaceful, grounded days where I reclaimed my space piece by piece. The plants moved back near the windows, the bookshelf alphabetized, the playlist returned to jazz instead of cartoon gingles or Ethan's yelling over multiplayer games. Then my phone pinged. It was from my father. Just a text. You could have handled it better. No greeting. No questions. No attempt to understand. I didn't reply. Because that single sentence, those 6 words, summed up every quiet wound I'd ever swallowed in this family. That even after everything, I was still expected to clean up what Sabrina wrecked. Time passed differently after they left. Slower. Softer. The air inside my apartment moved freely again, like it had been waiting to exhale all this time. Even the light looked different, less like a spotlight and more like something you could rest in. A week passed. Then the email came. It was from the landlord. All outstanding bills have been paid. Receipt attached. No signature. No message. Just numbers. Electricity. Water. HOA fines. The works. I stared at the screen. It wasn't me. I hadn't paid it. But someone had. Maybe it was Sabrina. Maybe it was my dad. Maybe it was guilt wrapped in pride, sent without words to make it seem like nothing had happened at all. But something had happened. Everything had happened. And that payment, anonymous or not, couldn't erase it. One evening, I was standing by the window, watching the city drown in golden hour, wine glass in hand. The towers shimmered like they were leaning into sunset, their shadows long and dramatic against the street below. And I caught my reflection in the glass. Same eyes. Same face. But something deeper had changed. She looked stronger. Not harder, but clearer. Like someone who had stopped apologizing for setting the boundary she never should have needed in the first place. You did it, I whispered to her. You took it back. A few days later, I heard a knock at the door. Not urgent. Not angry. Just tired. When I opened it, my mother stood there holding a pie. She looked older than I remembered. Not by years, by weight. The invisible kind you carry in your chest when you finally run out of excuses. I brought apple, she said. Your favorite. I stepped aside, wordless. We sat on the couch, not touching the pie. The silence stretched long and tense like a thread neither of us wanted to pull first. Then she spoke. We were wrong, she said softly. Your sister's staying with us now. It's chaos. I didn't respond. She needed to sit in that silence. I'm sorry we didn't listen, she added, barely above a whisper. I should have stepped in sooner. I nodded. Not in agreement. Not in forgiveness. Just to acknowledge that finally, she saw it. You raised me to take care of family, I said, my voice steady. But you forgot to raise her the same way. She blinked. Her lip trembled, but she didn't speak. We sat like that for a long while, 2 women separated by years of habit and expectation. Eating pie in silence. Letting old wounds breathe. When she left, she hugged me longer than she ever had before. Not tight, not desperate, just long. Like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. And that was okay. I didn't need the words anymore. Because I had the space. The peace. The quiet. And those things? I had earned with scars no one saw. A week later, I got a message from Sabrina. Not a call. Not a video chat. A single text. Are you happy now? I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. And that was the biggest shift of all. Life didn't magically fix itself after Sabrina left. There were still echoes, habits that clung like spiderwebs. I'd still catch myself listening for cartoons in the morning or reaching for mugs I didn't own anymore. Grief, even over chaos, has a strange way of lingering. But with each passing day, the apartment grew quieter. Lighter. And I began filling the silence with things that fed me. I painted again. Not for clients. For me. Canvases stretched across my studio, which was finally a studio again. I played music without worrying about someone asking me to turn it down. I cooked elaborate dinners without stepping over toy trucks or arguing over grocery bills. My world slowly, stubbornly, became mine again. And then, something happened I didn't expect. Not long after Mom's visit, I found a small padded envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, there was a single photograph, creased and old. It was of us. Me and Sabrina, maybe 10 or 11 years old. Sitting on the front porch of our childhood home, legs swinging off the step. I was holding a book in my lap. She had her head tilted toward me, grinning with grape juice on her lips. On the back, in looping handwriting that wasn't mine, was a single sentence. You were always the one who stayed. No name, no apology, just the truth. And it gutted me, because that had always been the role I played. The stayer. The fixer. The one who showed up even when I was falling apart. But not anymore. Now, I was the one who walked away and didn't look back. One final twist came weeks later. Tyler and I were sitting at a rooftop cafe, reviewing a new project. The light was crisp, the kind that made everything look slightly more cinematic. You ever think about moving? He asked suddenly, out of nowhere. I blinked. Moving where? Anywhere. A fresh place. A clean start. You've got clients all over. You could go wherever you want. I laughed, caught off guard. You think I should abandon the space I just won back? He smirked, swirling his coffee. Not abandon. Upgrade. You've proven you can build something from nothing. Now maybe it's time to build something bigger. It stuck with me. That night, I stood in my bedroom, my actual bedroom, and looked around. For the first time, it didn't feel like the final chapter. It felt like a launching point. The next morning, I pulled out my sketchpad. Not for a client. For myself. A new layout. A new space. A new city, maybe. Or maybe not. But I was designing from a place I'd never designed from before. Not fear, not pressure, not guilt. But power. And peace. Here's what no one tells you. Choosing yourself? It doesn't feel brave at first. It feels selfish. It feels wrong. It feels like tearing away from the only script you've ever been given and rewriting it from scratch. But after the guilt burns off, after the smoke clears, what's left is pure. And yours. The last box I unpacked was labeled simply, miscellaneous. Inside was a candle. A broken necklace. A letter from a client who'd thanked me for creating peace through design. And a note I'd written to myself 6 months earlier, taped to the inside flap. Make this a place you want to stay. I smiled, folded it up, and set it on the shelf. I had made this a place I wanted to stay. Then I made it a place I wasn't afraid to leave. So if you've ever stood at the edge of a boundary, shaking, wondering if you'll still be loved when you finally say no, this story is for you. You are not wrong. You are not cruel. You are not selfish. You are free. And sometimes peace doesn't come with a round of applause or a moment of triumph. It comes when you hear your own breathing in a quiet room. A room that is finally, blessedly, yours.